Hi, Eddie with Frank. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, how are you?
I have to apologize to both of you because I'm on a boat in Hong Kong Harbor. A friend of mine's having a birthday, and but I put my clock at 9 o'clock because I know that Eddie is on. So at least in the beginning, I want to be there and really welcome Eddie. And it's super cool that you're part of the team.
Thank you, Frank. It's an honor that you're with us. I appreciate you.
And I know that before Olivia takes it over, and I know it will be an amazing interview because I've been in so many, and Olivia is so knowledgeable about art, and I know it will be a great one. But just as an introduction from my side, it was around February. I started to be on Clubhouse, and I started to listen. And it was around, I think, the second week of March when Elon Musk was sending the tweet with people. And I thought from what is all happening? And then actually I started to follow all the Clubhouse rooms. And there was really one guy who really was the shining star. And that was literally Eddie. And that was Eddie. And I must say, Eddie is let's say a class apart. You are, first of all, you're extremely honest and open in your communication, and also what I just felt is you're also very strategic from the outset. And then Eddie launched the skulls, and I think I was in the room on the first or second drop. But I live in Sai Kung, and Olivia, Sai Kung, the Wi-Fi is very bad. So I was struggling for days because I wanted to get Eddie's skull. And I remember that after day 4 or 5, that Eddie gave me the heads up and he allowed me 5 minutes before 11. That was 11 was the time that he launched his 5 skulls, and he allowed me to get some skulls. And that's where, and I think it was literally one of my first NFTs. And so that was amazing. And then actually, I remember just before my birthday, I said to Eddie, hey, Eddie, I want to commission a work from you. And, and he did. And I give myself a birthday present. So it was the excitement of a new space. And it was, and I must say, the openness of Eddie and how approachable it was all at the beginning of that time was amazing. Now, yeah, where are we now? Around 7-8 months later, I messaged to Eddie that I think the skulls are actually super historic. We had in the beginning of May, we had the bored apes. I let it pass by. I didn't buy the apes. For me, it was not art. It was a community project. I just didn't understand it. But now looking back to the start of it all, I really feel that Eddie's skulls are actually really one of the first collectible, and the way he approached this, I really feel he was far ahead. And I'm still lucky because I kept hold of my skulls, and I really believe, and I told Eddie that I feel there will be a day that Eddie's skulls will be 10, 20, 30 Ethereum per piece, because they were so new, they were so innovative. The way he entered the space, it was really, he stood out to everyone. So so that's in short a little bit an introduction. We always, I always kept track of Eddie's work, and we see now the skull revival. I think in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we see it all coming back. And I went my course and kept on collecting art like I did Eddie's art. And so when we started, Levine and I started about MetaArt Club. For me, it was a no-brainer. One of the first on the list was Eddie. A few days ago, I saw all the submission of the art, and I am so unbelievable proud to see all the artists. The quality of the work is just insane, and yeah, to have Eddie Skulls in there is for me it's a testimony, and I really feel that it makes it complete. So just as a short introduction, Olivia, because I know your interviews are amazing, and you will get a lot out of Eddie and his thought process. But maybe this introduction helped, and Eddie, yeah, I just like to. I know that you know you go your course, and I know you're up to a lot of big things in the future. Um, but yeah, I think this will be a very interesting interview, and thanks to both, and thanks Eddie so much for joining.
Thank you, Frank. That was a kind introduction. I appreciate you.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Olivia. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So we're on opposite times in the day. So thank you, Frank, for that wonderful introduction. I know that Frank holds you in such high regard as an artist. So as a human, I mean, I know he's spoken so highly about you from the get-go. So it's an absolute pleasure, Eddie Gangland, to welcome you here, to all of our audience who are going to be watching this for the MetaArt Club. And it's such an honor to have a chance to sit down with you virtually. You're in Miami, we're here in Hong Kong today. And, you know, I can't wait to get into it with you. So thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Olivia. And Frank.
Frank. And if there's any point that we have a problem with Wi-Fi or anything, I'll just redo the question from the beginning, and then Sasha can edit it accordingly, okay?
Okay.
Cool. So you have had a meteoric rise within the NFT space, but you're certainly not new to being an artist, and your artistic practice was already very well established on the street scene. Can you give us, can you give our audience an introduction into, you know, what propelled you to start making art?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have been making street art for several years now. What happened was about 9 months ago, our first son was being born. He was born in February 10th. And around that time, I was looking for another creative avenue where I can kind of step away from street art a little bit to be around him more, and something less illegal, more highly looked upon. And I found this NFT scene. I was in the hospital. I remember I was in the hospital on Clubhouse and Googling and trying to figure out what NFTs were because everybody was talking about them. And I started finding my lane there. So I started dropping some random looking visuals, nothing related to skulls, and I hadn't really found my lane. And I might be going too in depth with this, but when I started doing the skulls, that's when I finally found my groove, I guess you could say.
Eddie, you can't go too deep for this interview, so you know, please feel free to wax lyrical for us, because it's, I think everyone who's going to be watching this will be so fascinated and intrigued to find out about your incredible trajectory in this space. And you talk about how you kind of came to the skulls, but being a street artist, you know, what was your formed by at that time? I mean, was it a much quicker artistic process because you had to kind of find walls and run from kind of angry building owners? I mean, I'm just kind of assuming that there was an element of danger in that for you.
Well, on the streets, my subject matter was also different. So I was tackling subjects like societal subjects and like different conflicts, and we had a really interesting president at that time, and he was a top subject of mine. So my street art looks almost nothing like my NFTs, which is what's fascinating, and why I think I got somewhat lucky just on clicking with with the Skull series. My street art was a lot more propaganda like, a lot more yeah, that sort of propaganda angle, those big letters, those strong visuals, and then that se- that segued itself uh, relatively easily though into the skulls because a lot of my skulls were coming up in my propaganda type images. And my wife was actually the one who noticed this, and she was like, "You like making skulls? Your skulls are always coming out. Why don't you just make skulls?" And that's kind of what triggered it. And then I just started making skulls from that point on, and it worked.
Amazing. And the process of going from, you know, using spray paints, um, very physical work as a street artist, to then transitioning. I mean, had you been working on, you know, your tablet, or what digital medium do you use, and you know, what, how did that kind of path lead you?
Understood. Yeah, so it was, well, the good thing about my street art was I was doing a lot of wheat pasting, and wheat pasting is very similar to like what Shepard Fairey does, which is basically you go out with these images already printed out as posters, and then you're applying the street art onto the walls with some sort of homemade paste. Um,
Okay.
the advantage to that for me was that I became relatively good at using on my tablet because I was creating these visuals that were powerful propaganda like visuals through my digital art. So even though I was going out and doing like the quote unquote tagging with my spray paints, a lot of my art was actually more like art related in the sense that they were finished images many times before I even made it to the street. So that
Got it.
helped.
Got it. Okay, that's really interesting, Eddie. And you know, you've now made the Gangland Skulls collection your signature, but certainly it's not the only thing that defines how, you know, how, let's get into the Gangland Skulls and the time frame, of, you know, you developing your first skulls that Frank outlined, and how you got into NFTs. So first of all, the skulls, you know, how you then developed that, subject within your work and made it each one so unique and so dynamic, and, you know, speak to such a variety, I think, of collectors. I mean, your skulls are really incredible.
Thank you so much for saying that. That has been an interesting concoction for me. So I am incredibly very ADHD. I am all over the place. My energy is all over the place all the time. The skulls has helped contain and focus that energy, I think. Um, so whereas in the past where I was creating all of these different visual topics attacking societal issues, now these skulls have given me a sort of frame where my mind can go crazy within that frame, but I have that frame, so it really helps me personally. And I think that's why it's allowed me to get pretty creative with the skulls because I start with my frame and then I kind of pour into that frame rather than recreating a new frame every time. I have my frame already and I'm just pouring creativity into that frame, which is very helpful.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you know, how does it feel to be a pioneer in the NFT space and to be a vocal pioneer? So you didn't just start with the whole craze, but you've also been kind of like a mentor and an educator to the community of artists and beyond that. So did you naturally kind of inhabit that role? Was that something that you set out to do, Eddie?
I believe a lot of that was just based on my luck or my I'll call it success early on is that a lot of these artists were reaching out to me thinking that I had the answers and I honestly didn't. So I mean like Frank is so kind and says these nice things, but a lot of these things I've learned on the fly. And then I try to pass on some of that knowledge onto these people who are entering the space now, just because when I was entering the space, which it was only about 8 or 9 months ago, so it's not that long, but 8 or 9 months in the NFT space is probably years in other art realms, just because when you're so early on to a new technology, a new sort of artistic medium, at least in my opinion, there's a huge advantage in the sense that there aren't many competitors. There's a lot of people trying to figure out their own lane in that new space. Um, so I have to say that I in some ways got lucky that I found this space through my son being born, and then I was able to kind of carve out that skull path relatively fast. Whereas a lot of people coming in now, it's very saturated already. So you have to come in with a very clear plan. Otherwise, you sometimes look wishy-washy. It's a very different, it's a more difficult realm now than it was 8 months ago. I have to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure. And certainly, we're seeing kind of a shakedown, if you will, of
Mhm.
the quality of the artists kind of, being delineated, and that's certainly what we're trying to hone into and tap into with the MetaArt Club and the curated element. And that's something that I think our collectors really respond to, because there is so much out there, as you rightfully pointed out. So it's a question of kind of really picking the winners and the ones who are going to be tomorrow's sensations as well as today's. So it's an interesting time. So Eddie, you've gone from Gangland skulls and you continue to innovate in that subject space, and now you're into metaverse monsters. Can you give us an overview of how you create? I mean, I read somewhere that you create every day, and because you're so passionate about art, it's like a natural extension of you. But how do you come up with, the characters beyond the skulls?
Um, so a lot of it is just in my day-to-day interactions, to be honest. And this has also worked in my favor largely because so, and going off on a tangent a tiny bit, about 7 months ago, I quit all of my side jobs in order to go at this full-time NFT. So that has allowed me to dedicate a large part of my day to hanging out with my son and going out on the streets and finding these new inspirations. And I think that's what makes it very challenging for other artists. And I totally understand. I'm not trying to look down in any way, but it's very difficult when you're trying, and I know I did it. It's very difficult when you're trying to pursue your art passion and also trying to pay the bills, especially as you're starting out, because you're sort of fitting these art times into very off times wherever you can find space. And I have the advantage where I have my whole entire day. So if I see something that inspires me at 7 a.m. or at 2 a.m., I'm able to creatively pursue that kind of idea. I think that's an advantage.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear that. And it seems to me, in speaking, you and your community of fellow artists, that through NFTs you have a level of agency as an artist that is unprecedented, I would say. You control kind of your output. You control the narrative. How has that played out for you, Eddie?
For me, fantastically, I would say. I'm really enjoying that aspect of this, in the sense that I feel this space is going to really allow for the go-getters to get very far ahead just because they don't stop. I think this space is going to basically carve itself out to be a space where you have creative teams. So let's say the Meta Art Club is a creative team. I think strong creative teams will get very far ahead, and then you'll have the very, very, very hardworking one-person teams who get very far ahead. Because what I anticipate happening is a lot of other corporations and stuff coming in and wiping out a lot of the others. So that's why, and I agree with you. That's one of the focuses that I personally have, is trying to build my community as large and as fast in some ways as possible, just to kind of anticipate what I believe is coming.
Yeah, but that's incredibly generous of you, and you spend time on giving back to the NFT community. I mean, I've read that you're planning a solo tour for 2022 where you're actually going to be talking about your process. Is that right?
Yeah, so the goal for that is, this year I have been kind of non-existent in the group meetups. So there's been NYC, there's been Miami, there's been a few of those, and I've kind of stayed away largely for my son and because of the COVID pandemic, unfortunately. Starting next year, I want to be a lot more. I basically haven't met any of my collectors, which is crazy to me, because the majority of NFT artists have been able to go to these events, and I haven't had that opportunity yet personally. So I guess next year I just want to go 100,000%, do my solo tour, get out to some of these larger, at least US cities, pick some of these international cities, and get to meet people one-on-one who are investing in my craft.
That's incredible. And I think obviously with collectors like Frank Smits from the MetaArt Club, you personal connections with your collectors. So ultimately that might be a really rewarding prospect that you're actually going to get to meet the people who love your work so much.
I'm super excited about that, sincerely.
Yeah, fantastic. So I wanted to segue into your language and how you kind of express yourself in a transparent, really honest, upfront way that's so empowering. And I think that also plays into your work in a really unique way. How what gives you that fearlessness and that kind of commitment to telling your truth?
A lot of it comes back to the fact that I quit my job 7 or 8 months ago, and I never want to go back to that world. And I believe the more transparent, the louder, the more creative I am in this space will allow me to sort of get my foothold here. So I guess you could say I have everything to lose, but I also have nothing to lose in the sense that I'm one of the earliest NFT creators. So I guess I'm in a way setting the tone. And I think it's good. We should be transparent. I mean, the blockchain lends itself towards transparency. I don't think we need to hide anything. I think our creative abilities will shine through and our communities will shine through. And we just need to be transparent and honest in ourselves.
Yeah, that's just such an inspiring way to be and way to live and practice as an artist. And I'm sure a lot of artists will really thank you for your your honesty and your transparency and for how you inspire them as well. And I wanted to just frame where you are now based, which is Miami. There's a big crypto community in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take, obviously you've had to learn everything about NFTs. So how did that process start for you, Eddie? How did you dive into the rabbit hole of NFTs? Do you do everything yourself? Do you collaborate with animators? How does that look for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I, at this moment, largely need some interns. I largely need some assistance because it's been only me. I mean, aside from like my amazing wife and my son, if you want to call that emotional support, it's been just me. So I don't collaborate with any animators. I do that by myself. I do the marketing by myself. I do it all. It's a full day every day. But I think a lot of that also lends itself to my thought process that I believe I have a very clear, even though I don't say it, I mean, I say it plenty out loud, but in my mind, I have a very clear idea of what I want to get accomplished in the next few years. And from my perspective, it's going to require a lot of my personal time up front in these first 1 to 3 years in order to create a large enough, let's just say, following, where then maybe I'm able to step back slightly in years 4 through 5 and I have a larger team around me. But I feel like right now, when we're just starting out and everyone's starting to meet these creators, I think it's very important for me to be very much me and very much all about me so that you get to know me. And then after that, you already know me. So then if I have a strong team around me, I think that'll push through the next few years.
Yeah. With that, Eddie, you mentioned your plan for the next 1, 2, 3 years. This year, 2021, if I was to have spoken to you in January, like we're here in November, the end of November, you know, it's been kind of a warp speed year in the NFT space. Do you foresee that level of change and you know, rapid development within the NFT space happening annually, or are you quite clear on how you see the next 5 years within the space?
I think it's gonna depend year to year. I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Olivia. Yeah, so I think next year will be very rapid. I think next year will be even more rapid than this year. That'll be across the board. That won't be just me. Um, and then I think it'll start slowing down once we have some of that mass adoption. But I don't believe we've even come close to mass adoption yet. I think a lot of people are, not a lot of people, but a lot of the people who don't know about NFTs are trying to call this a bubble. But if you're going to call this a bubble, I mean, it's the smallest bubble you've ever seen because there's barely anybody in here really trading yet in the grand scheme of things. So what I anticipate happening is next year, the floodgates kind of pour in. People are looking for projects. And then by that time, I hope to, I mean, it only gives me 2 months or so, but I think by then I have a large enough brand presence where hopefully I get some of that, the people flowing in come to my collection, and then we just continue growing from there. And then I think it'll start trickling down in activity when you have all those people already in this realm. But that doesn't mean, I don't think NFTs are going away. Like I don't think NFTs as collectibles will ever go away at this point. I think they've become a part of our society, and it's just a small part of us collecting them at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, that's a powerful vision, and it leads into my next question to you, Eddie. You think we're living in a digital renaissance? And if so,
think we're living through an art renaissance unlike anything we've lived through. I think it's going to be art renaissance. We've never been free. Artists have never had this level of freedom and abilities to raise capital and start these real missions. I mean, and just in full clarity for everybody listening, so far, all I've really done is create these creative skulls. But I have an idea to like incorporate real kind of life missions and ways to give back and all these kinds of things. At this point, we've just had the kind of creative face. And in the next few years, hopefully you can see kind of like the brain power and ideas behind just that cover art, so to speak.
yeah, absolutely. The process of creating NFTs has created this really unique opportunity, as you've so articulately pointed out, that it's not just about the process of the art from the outside, which is what 2021 is about, if I'm getting what you've just said correctly, yeah. But it's also about really building into NFTs the fact that you can create on the blockchain, you know, a very transparent lead into charitable donations, that it's not about you giving them physically to a charity, but you can actually build it into the smart contract of your NFT. And this just has kind of infinite possibilities, but it's the first time that artists have been able to say, okay, I'm going to give 50%, 20%, 100% to, you know, to helping people and helping communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we'll see, again, I think 2021 is kind of the year where we're all learning. I think we're going to see a lot more, especially charitable contributions in the next few years, because I think it's going to be something that a lot of collectors are going to look for. I think it's nice when not only are you collecting something, but you're helping towards, even if it's not a charitable mission, if you're investing towards some sort of unified mission, whether that's a funding mission or a charitable mission or some sort of mission aside from just the art. I personally feel like that's where the culture is going to go, but nobody knows.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're shaping the culture, so I think you have a say in that. And going back to that charitable mission, Eddie, you know, how do you see that playing out within your work?
Sure. So, um, me and my wife and I have personally been trying to figure out what kind of charitable missions we wanted to spearhead, so to speak. One of these missions we have is trying to sponsor as many children as we can across the world. So there's these different organizations that allow you to basically sponsor these children on a month to month basis, and that provides them with access to medical health and food and shelter and access to education. So this year to start out, because we didn't really again 2021 has been kind of just a figure it out sort of year, but we wanted to see what we were capable of doing, so we sponsored 10 children this year. So about 2 months ago we started that, and we selected children from Tanzania and from Ecuador and from Zimbabwe, and we have one guy from Nicaragua. And basically through a very small portion, I mean, I won't even lie to you, a very small portion so far of our NFT proceeds are giving these 10 children, these 10 living children, access to food. I mean, education, that's through NFTs. So I think that's not mind blowing to me. And I can just imagine as this sort of snowballs and as my brand grows and hopefully the capital behind it grows. I mean, I hope to sponsor 20, 30, 100 children. I think that to me would be the true definition of success, when not only can we say, look, we're putting bread on the table, but we're actually supporting other humans in this world through our NFTs and through our creative abilities. I think that's going to be success.
It's so powerful to hear you articulate that, and it's so incredible to see the way that NFTs are not just benefiting the artists themselves, and that's powerful enough, because we're seeing artists in countries around the world that they wouldn't have been given the same opportunities that they are now to improve their lives, because they have access to a global collector base and they're in control of their career. But now, as you've just pointed out, you're going to be changing lives and charitably giving back and making not just a difference to children's lives, but actually changing their lives because of your NFTs. So that's just completely incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying. My wife can't even believe what's going on. To be quite honest with everybody listening and everyone who has a spouse and a partner, my wife still can't believe how much our life has changed. And this is, I mean, we're still 8, 9 months in. But I've kind of seen the reverse point, and I see how blessed we are and how lucky we are and how fortunate we are. But I can see where I can take in the next few years, and with real capital and real funding, I mean, anybody with some sort of creative or mission of some sort can really take NFTs to just the absolute moon. So it's very exciting. It's an interesting time to be alive.
It is an interesting time to be alive. That's a great way of putting it. And Eddie, you have created some works with quite an anti-establishment kind of mindset behind them, but that on the outside, to the external eye, looks like you may have collaborated with the likes of Supreme or Gap, but in fact, you're making a statement on kind of corporate collaborations with artists. Can you just give us a quick overview of that?
Absolutely, yeah. So, especially when I was doing street art and making my street art, I was kind of targeting these ideas of how quickly people got ahead because they jumped onto these brands' backs. So I've always been largely against that, mainly because they didn't pay me any sort of attention in the years where I was actually struggling and trying to make myself. And now suddenly they want to collaborate because I have NFTs. And I think that the interesting part about that is that I think that's only going to evolve and get more and more in the creatives' favors, in the sense that brands are starting to realize that they kind of require creators in order to have their brand. And I think they're starting to realize this. And I think they're going to realize it even more, because what I think is going to happen is these amazing creators that are in-house at these brands will start stepping out and either creating their own brands or funding through NFTs or things of that nature. So I actually see, I'm starting to see, and I think we'll see more of a distinction between brands and creative entities, because these brands will have to collaborate with one-on-one artists in order to even save face and have that sort of recognition. I think that's what's coming.
That's very interesting, Eddie, and I love that insight into how you're seeing this conversation evolve, and also, you know, the brands themselves are really going to have to kind of step up and change the way they create and what they put out in terms of their creative kind of. That's interesting. You are now buying real estate in the metaverse, and you have billboards in the metaverse. Can you give us an insight into, you know, how that came about and where you intend to steer that?
Absolutely. And that's one area where I actually am really looking to hire some interns in the next few months and build that out even further, just because I have the space, but I'm a one-man team. So at this time, I believe I have 6 metaverse plots that I own. So these are all mine. I've begun to put up some billboards in some of these spaces, which lead people to the Gangland Skulls NFT collection. My thought process for the metaverse over the next few years is, I think right now we're very early. The majority of the investors jumping into the metaverse right now, I think, are looking at it with a long-term perspective rather than a short-term, because the amount of traffic that is currently there is not what I think the average consumer would expect. There's not thousands and thousands and millions of people walking through the metaverse at this moment. What I think a lot of us are expecting is the metaverse will become a sort of 3D interactive internet layer, so to speak, just to dumb it down a lot. And then at that point in time, I now have these 6 plots. So the beautiful part about the metaverse is you pay for these plots one time. So I own these plots. These plots are mine. I own them through the deed of an NFT. I don't pay any sort of lease or tax or month-to-month payments. Those plots are mine for the in perpetuity, forever, the entire time the metaverse is around. So let's say a year from now, when I believe that foot traffic will really be crazy within the metaverse and the prices are astronomical, those of us who got in early sort of avoided all of that sort of fight to get a plot I'm ready for, so that I can have, I mean, galleries and stores where I can sell Gangland merchandise. I mean, basically you create a whole empire in the metaverse.
Yeah, it's so exciting, Eddie, and I think you are absolutely at the kind of forefront of the zeitgeist with your art, and you know, how you are already thinking about how you're going to be you know, bringing it to these audiences that are going to begin populating the metaverse. And for TMAC, for the MetaArt Club, we're building the Metaverse Museum on a Decentraland plot. So that's something that, you know, we'll be rolling out in 2022, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to showcase your work there. So that's going to be a little reveal at some point.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's exciting. So Eddie, you know, you've termed yourself, you've coined yourself the street artist of the metaverse, and I just love that. I think it's powerful, and it's also honest, because you're really making that into a reality for yourself. So Eddie, I just wanted to say thank you for, you know, for sharing and for all of your incredible kind of answers to our audience within this interview, and I know that they're going to find it incredibly informative. So thank you, and I look forward to touching base again, hopefully on a podcast at some point soon for the MetaArt Club. So thank you so much, Eddie Gangland.
Thank you both. Have a beautiful weekend. You guys have really made my day.
Thank you, Eddie. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.